Hello, everyone. This is Kamhi, the Natural Nurse, and I want to thank you so much for joining us. This is our just little mini intro to cooling the fire dragon, which we will be having through the Florida School of Holistic Living. And by the way, you can get CE units if you're a nurse, a registered dietitian, a licensed massage therapist, or an acupuncturist, a clinical nutritionist. But if you don't need credits, you can just take it for your own information. What is the fire dragon? Let's take a look. It is about the excess inflammatory reactions, and it made it to the cover of Time magazine because inflammation is the cause of every health issue, such as heart attacks, cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes. And really, it's hard to think of anything that inflammation isn't about. So that's how important the fire dragon is. So a sleeping dragon, I love this look of a sleeping dragon because the inflammatory process is actually protective for the body. It eliminates the initial cause of cell damage. So the sleeping dragon is like a watch dragon. He's there just making sure, keeping everything in place and keeping half an eye open. But once that dragon gets woken up, then it can lead to all kinds of diseases of chronic inflammation, such as cancer, cardiovascular, Alzheimer's, all of these autoimmune diseases, neurological, diabetes, as I mentioned earlier, they're all linked to inflammation. And that leads to pain, as well as difficulty sleeping, mood changes, activity and not having enough energy. All of that is linked to pain. And this flower right here is one of the many that is so useful. This is actually a California poppy flower. We'll be talking about that. There's a yin and yang of inflammation because, as we said, the beginning stages of inflammation are very protective against the body. But when they become long-term, that's when they break down cell structure and cause illness. Lots and lots of science about this. This one is talking about the fact that part of your reaction to the inflammatory process has to do with your genetics. What kind of SNPs do you have in your DNA? Well, that causes a differential outcome in inflammatory and infectious diseases. And we know it's because of certain pathways of inflammation. So there's a lot known about this scientifically. And we also know that the thing that is used most often in conventional interventions are NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which do bring inflammation down, which is great. However, they often cause very severe GI damage and mucosal injury and internal bleeding. So that's why there are now warning labels, all the NSAIDs. They work during various pathways, including COX-1 and COX-2. We'll go into that in the webinar, very important to understand. And they do bring down pain, which is good, but they cause a lot of damage to the gastrointestinal tract, which isn't good. However, we can look at botanicals for inflammation. And this is just a little recap of some of the ones we'll be covering, like ashwagandha, boswellia, California poppy, devil's claw, feverfew, ginger, and some that are less known, like Jamaican dogwood, kava kava, nettles, rosemary, skullcap. Turmeric is very well known, and it's a great one for inflammation. Valerian and wild lettuce, which grows right outside. I just picked some this morning. So we're going to talk about what we can use because the botanicals often work better than the NSAIDs, but even more importantly, they have a very low incidence of negative effects. And we'll talk about some of the actives within these, such as resveratrol in grapes and Japanese knotweed, quercetin, which is in onions, vanillic acid, which is in vanilla beans, and Angelica sinensis, also known as deng guai in Chinese medicine, the curcumin, which is in turmeric. So there's lots to know. When we're talking about Jamaican dogwood, it is so well known in the tropics. This is my dear friend, herbalist Diane Robertson, actually out in the field there teaching us about Jamaican dogwood. Curanderos and ancient healers always used it in the Amazon. So it was also used by MDs right here in this country at the turn of the century. The eclectic physicians used Jamaican dogwood all the time. And here's a bottle of it that is actually made by Park Davis. And this gentleman, John Uri Lloyd, documented the effects of many of these medicinal herbs in various literature, such as the Eclectic Medical Journal, which is something you actually can read right now and find out all these fabulous uses for herbs, which they just dismissed when the pharmaceutical companies started to take over and realized they could make a whole lot more money with those chemical isolates. But nonetheless, these things work great, and they usually have a much lower incidence of side effects and a much better outcome as well. Another great plant that you can grow for yourself that's wonderful to bring down that inflammatory response and put that fire dragon back to sleep is rosemary, as well as turmeric. And I have studied this with indigenous cultures around the world. This is my teacher, Jamba of the Maroons in Jamaica. And we were out there gathering turmeric on his farm. In fact, we take people on these trips. If you'd ever like to go, just visit Eco Tours for Cures. And we go every year to take people to live in indigenous cultures for a while and learn about the plants that grow there. But meanwhile, you can learn about the plants that grow right in your yard. Or, of course, you can purchase herbals that are conveniently located in your health food store and on the market. Here's wild lettuce. Many of you can probably identify that plant. It's like a giant dandelion leaf. And when you break it, it has this latex in it. And here's a syrup made of wild lettuce as an old-fashioned remedy. So these are things that have been used for long periods of time, very safely and very effectively. This is bitter. Really bitter, but wonderful at decreasing the inflammatory response. Here's an entire book that I wrote along with my illustrious co-writer, Dr. Eugene Samperone, specifically on arthritis. But of course, the whole thing is about how to bring down inflammation. And we go into great depths, such as detoxification, bacteria and yeast, getting rid of parasites, leaky gut syndrome, how do allergies play in, the autoimmune reaction, and of course, the all-important mind-body approach. That's how we bring down inflammation. And in our talk, we'll go into all of these things in quite a bit of detail, along with give you resources from how you can find out more about what you can do to keep your fire dragon happy and at rest. So until next time, this is Ellen Kamhi, the Natural Nurse. You can always find me at naturalnurse.com, and I look forward to sharing information with you. Stay healthy.